Good morning. I'm Lee Hamilton. I'm the President and Director of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. And it's, of course, my pleasure to welcome you here today to the first Institute for Far Eastern Studies, University of North Korean Studies Forum at the Center. It is also a pleasure for the Center's North Korea International Documentation Project and Asia program to be partnering with the Institute for Far East Studies and the University of North Korean Studies, both affiliated with Kwangnam University. We're honored to welcome a very distinguished group of scholars from the United States and Korea. Many of you in the audience, I know, have held high-ranking positions in your respective governments. Indeed, the combined expertise in this room is really quite remarkable. I want especially to recognize the Republic of Korea's Ambassador to the United States, Duk Soo Han, who is with us this morning, former Republic of Korea Ambassador to the United States, Jun Young Sun, and former National Security Advisor to the South Korean President, Byung Gyung Kim. It is a very special privilege to welcome Dr. Jae-Gyu Park. He comes back to the center after having visited here before, of course. He is one of the world's leading experts on inter-Korean affairs. Dr. Park is a renowned scholar and a policymaker, a bridge between academia and government in the finest tradition of Woodrow Wilson, a tradition that this center seeks, of course, to uphold. He is the current president of the University of North Korean Studies in Kwangnam University, a former Minister of Unification and chairman of the National Security Council for the Republic of Korea. He is the current presidential advisor on Korean unification affairs. In November of last year, President Park received the Jacques Chirac Prize for Conflict Prevention in recognition of his extraordinary 40-year devotion to maintaining peace on the Korean Peninsula. President Park has been a great friend of the Wilson Center, and I am very grateful to him. I am pleased to welcome him now to this podium. President Park.
Good morning. Ambassador Han, President Hamilton, Deputy Secretary Steinberg, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to be here with you and make some opening remarks. Today's event marks the beginning of the IFES and the UNKS Forum in Washington. This inaugural forum demonstrates the value of the growing partnership between the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars and the Kwangnam University and the University of North Korean Studies for helping give birth to this forum and fostering the partnership. I would like to thank you, Mr. Lee Hamilton, President of the Woodrow Wilson Center, for his leadership and vision. I'd also like to thank the excellent team of the scholars of the center led by Kristen Ostman for advancing the process of our academic partnership. Today's forum brings together prominent scholars and experts to discuss peace and security on Korean Peninsula, the theme of today's event. The Korean Peninsula has long been a source of instability in Northeast Asia and beyond. Of course, the problem of North Korea is regional and global problem. To solve it will require the effort and the cooperation of all of the stakeholders nations of the world, let alone the United Nations. Our immediate task as stakeholders is to find ways to bring North Korea back to the six-party talks aimed at North Korea's denuclearization, even though the resumption of the talks doesn't mean the end of the problem. South Korea's current policy, essentially based on reciprocity toward North Korea, conforms to the goals of maintaining peace, developing inter-Korean relations, and pursuing peaceful reunification. It puts precedence on denuclearization of the North, but it has yet to induce the North back to the negotiation. Cooperation and the consensus among the main stakeholders, the United Nations, the United States, Korea, China, Russia, and Japan is essential. All of us must be prepared to work not only to resolve the nuclear crisis, but also, as President Obama has said, to offer North Korea a different future. In this endeavor, the ROK-US alliance, which has been a pillar of stability in the region, will be a foundation in which to move forward. As well, peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula is of keen interest to China, and its role and active cooperation will continue to be important. If we can achieve a common view on the problem of North Korea, progress on the nuclear issue will come forward more smoothly and swiftly. Together, the University of North Korean Studies and Woodrow Wilson Center have strived to bring great understanding of North Korea and of the problems surrounding the Korean Peninsula. The work we have done together so far to uncover North Korea's Cold War history has been an ongoing success, drawing significant attention from the Korean public. I am sure that academic partnership between our two institutions will continue to contribute to the research and the policy-making communities of Korea and the U.S. and others. On that note, let me again thank you for coming to the forum. I hope all of you will find today's proceedings informative and stimulating. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Park. My pleasure now to introduce the morning's keynote speaker, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, James Steinberg. 1 year ago today, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton swore Mr. Steinberg in as her deputy, at which time he took up one of the largest, most important, and most challenging portfolios in our government. Jim, happy anniversary to you after 1 year. I'm not sure this is exactly the best way to celebrate, but it's one way to celebrate. Jim, of course, is an experienced, a dedicated, and very able public servant. Prior to his appointment by President Obama, he served with distinction as Dean of the Lyndon B. Johnson School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas, Austin, from which he is currently on leave. Prior to his leadership in Austin, he was Vice President and Director of Foreign Policy Studies at the Brookings Institution. During President Clinton's administration, Mr. Steinberg served in numerous important and vital positions, among them Deputy National Security Advisor, Chief of Staff for the United States State Department, Director of Policy Planning, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Analysis in the Bureau of Intelligence and Research. He's held positions at the RAND Corporation and the International Institute for Strategic Studies in London. He's also served as the late Senator Ted Kennedy's principal aide on the Senate Armed Services Committee. He's the author of numerous books and articles on foreign policy and national security. A native of Boston, Massachusetts, he attended Harvard College and Yale Law School. He and his wife, Sherburne B. Abbott, have 2 children. Following his remarks, Christian Osterman, who oversees our National Korea International Documentation Project and does so very ably, serves also as director of the Wilson Center's History and Public Policy Program. Christian will moderate a Q&A session. Ladies and gentlemen, Deputy Secretary of State James Steinberg.
Well, thank you, Lee, for that kind introduction, and I want to pay tribute to you for your many decades of public service. You've been a model and an inspiration to so many, including me, over the years, and I've been grateful for your good counsel and guidance in so many different capacities. It's a great pleasure to be here this morning, and thanks to the Wilson Center, along with the University of North Korean Studies and the Institute of Far East Studies for hosting this event. Dr. Park, for your very thoughtful remarks. Lee, has it only been 1 year? It seems like a lot longer than that. It is actually a good way to to mark this year anniversary because I think it's been clear from the beginning of this administration the importance that the administration places on this region and our relationships with South Korea and our other partners in Northeast Asia. It was almost exactly a year ago that the Secretary embarked on her first trip as Secretary of State. I think you'll all recall her first trip was to East Asia, a reflection of the importance that we attach to this region. And I think as we continue our work in the coming years in the Obama administration, we'll look to the Wilson Center and Lee and our colleagues here today and those of you in the audience who are working on these issues for wisdom and insight going forward. This is a very timely moment for a conference on peace and security in the Korean Peninsula. As this audience well knows, 2010 is an important year of anniversaries for U.S. engagement in East Asia, including the 60th anniversary of the outbreak of the Korean War. And through these past 6 decades, peace and security on the Korean Peninsula has been a central consideration for the United States. But even though our presence in and our focus on the region has been enduring, this is an appropriate time for us to reflect both on what has changed as well as the challenges that we face in the years ahead. The course of these past 6 decades, in many ways, is both a cause for celebration and at the same time a cautionary tale. The divergent paths pursued by South and North Korea exemplify the truth that the Wilson Center's namesake recognized a century ago. Nations that are fully engaged in the international community and that respect the fundamental rights of their citizens prosper and progress. Those that choose isolation and oppression do not. I don't need to remind this distinguished group gathered here today of the remarkable story of South Korea's achievements over the past 60 years. From the ravages of war, poverty, and early years of authoritarian governance, South Korea has emerged as a vibrant, democratic, and increasingly prosperous society, offering opportunity to its people, partnership to its friends, and leadership on the global stage. From its membership in the OECD to its upcoming role as the host of the G20, South Korea has taken its place as one of the core players in the global economy. From its role in anti-piracy operations to its contributions to stability in Iraq and Afghanistan, South Korea has moved from a consumer of security to a provider of security to others. Of course, North Korea has taken the opposite path, turning its back on the globalized world and the basic freedoms that would allow its citizens to thrive and prosper, despite the open hand offered by South Korea and the entire international community. And despite its vast head start compared with the South, today its citizens regularly face the ravages of hunger, fear, and disease, the tragic consequences of placing its military rather than its people first. Its pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles deepens its self-imposed isolation, although, as I will discuss in more detail in a few minutes, we hope that its leaders will seize the chance to pursue a more hopeful engagement with the world in the coming months. A moment ago, I observed that this was a year of anniversaries, and just last week we marked the 50th anniversary of our security alliance with Japan. Our bilateral alliances with South Korea and Japan, along with Australia, Thailand, and the Philippines, have played a crucial role in maintaining stability on the Korean Peninsula and throughout East Asia. They've provided an environment in which Korea, Japan, and other countries of East Asia have had the chance to prosper. As Secretary Clinton made clear in her speech just 2 weeks ago in Hawaii, these bilateral alliances continue to provide the foundation for our engagement in the region. Our security commitment has helped the region overcome what we academics call the security dilemma, largely avoiding the destabilizing spiral of mistrust and militarization, instead allowing countries to grow, prosper, and integrate in a context of reassurance rather than anxiety and fear. This reassurance will be more important than ever as we work to overcome the challenges and seize the opportunities on the Korean Peninsula today. Of course, our alliances must evolve to adapt to the changing regional and global environment, as the Cold War paradigm that dominated our thinking for decades is replaced by a more complex but potentially more optimistic set of relationships among the countries of Northeast Asia. We've been working hard with South Korea and Japan to update and enhance our alliances in a spirit of partnership and equality, which befits their own achievements over the past half-century. This spirit was very much on display in President Lee's very successful visit to the United States last spring and President Obama's visit to South Korea this fall. They strengthened an already strong personal relationship, and President Obama reiterated his support for the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement in his State of the Union address just 2 days ago, to build on an $83 billion trade relationship, our seventh largest trading partner, strengthen our bilateral bonds, and bring new and needed jobs to our workers. Later this year, South Korea will host the so-called 2+2 meeting. Secretary Clinton and Secretary Gates will meet with their counterparts in Seoul to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Korean War and the progress in our alliance. One important part of this effort is the relocation of our troops. The headquarters of U.S. Forces Korea will move from downtown Seoul to a new headquarters 30 miles south of Seoul, and the over 100 U.S. military bases spread across Korea will be consolidated around 2 strategic hubs south of the Han River. This will transform a Cold War-era military footprint into a better positioned, modern force posture without sacrificing our commitment to the alliance. And we will continue to work together on updating our command relationships to reflect our evolving alliance. This is an alliance which is increasingly global, and we're appreciative of South Korea's growing willingness to expand its global role commensurate with its political and economic achievements on the full range of issues that will define the coming decades for Northeast Asia and beyond. Last June, Presidents Obama and President Lee issued a joint vision statement for the alliance, which serves as a forward-looking framework for increased bilateral cooperation. The Republic of Korea, of course, is already demonstrating a firm commitment to international peace and prosperity. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon embodies the strong values and ideals that bind the United States and Republic of Korea on the global stage. And Seoul is an active contributor to UN peacekeeping missions, including UNIFIL in Lebanon. Most recently, it decided to offer 200-plus peacekeepers and $10 million in emergency assistance to Haiti. It's a key member of the anti-piracy task force off the coast of Somalia, and it's underscored its commitment to nonproliferation last year by endorsing the Proliferation Security Initiative. We're also appreciative of its earlier role at Camp Zaytun in Iraq, and now for announcing that it will send a provincial reconstruction team to Afghanistan. And we welcome Foreign Minister Yu's announcement that the South Korean government plans to triple its official development assistance by 2015. South Korea's development assistance has built schools in Pakistan and Afghanistan, roads and hospitals in Iraq. Through innovative partnerships with private groups, South Korea is helping bring broadband infrastructure to African countries to ensure that as they develop, they are integrated into the international community and not merely set pieces in global development efforts. We're looking forward to the November G20 Leader Summit in Seoul, a reflection of Seoul's increasingly important role. Seoul and South Korea has played an important leadership role during the financial crisis by joining the Financial Stability Board and undertaking swift financial reforms to ensure its economy would be able to weather the economic challenges of the future. Similarly, we are working with our partners in Japan to sustain our crucial alliance. A few days ago, I had a chance to reflect on those challenges and opportunities, and today simply want to reiterate that we welcome the vibrant dialogue with Japan's new leaders, as exemplified by Secretary Clinton's recent meeting with Foreign Minister Okada in Hawaii. As President Obama said in his Tokyo speech, the U.S.-Japan alliance is not a historic relic from a bygone era, but an abiding commitment to each other that is fundamental to our shared security. That means it's essential that we work together to make sure the alliance retains the support and understanding of both the Japanese and the American people, and that we implement a sound plan for sustaining our military cooperation for the benefit of our two peoples and for the region as a whole. The end of the Cold War has brought with it the opportunity to supplement our security alliances with increasingly strong bilateral ties to the two other key nations of Northeast Asia, Russia and China. And with both of them, the Obama administration has set out to build new, broader, more action-oriented partnerships that are absolutely necessary if we are to overcome the central challenges in Northeast Asia and around the globe. With Russia, we hit the famous reset button in relations. While this doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to agree on every issue or resolve every source of tension in our relationship, we are making important progress. And we are now close to concluding negotiations on a new START treaty that will be an important step in U.S.-Russian relations and for global nonproliferation efforts. With China, we took an important step in institutionalizing a broader and more effective partnership with the first strategic and economic dialogue held here in Washington, indeed here in the Reagan Building, last July, an arrangement that builds on strong working ties between President Obama and President Hu and Secretary Clinton and her Chinese counterparts. Those discussions reflected a mutual understanding that we have common interests, and that when it comes to our most urgent shared challenges, from security in East Asia to the global challenges of climate change, nonproliferation, terrorism, and pandemic disease, that there is little hope for progress if we do not work closely together. As we look forward to the second meeting of the Strategic and Economic Dialogue in China next summer, we're having discussions on an unprecedented range of topics of common interest and common concern that we hope will ultimately yield common action. More broadly, we are also deepening our ties with other key partners in East Asia, from our increasingly productive relationship with India to our enhanced cooperation with ASEAN through our accession to ASEAN's Treaty on Amity and Cooperation. But our bilateral relationships alone cannot achieve the kind of regional and global cooperation we need to meet the challenges of the 21st century. That's why Secretary Clinton set forth our vision of how to deepen multilateral engagement in East Asia for economic growth, security, and to address transnational threats. As Secretary Gates observed several years back, the United States is a resident power in the Asia-Pacific, and the Obama administration is determined to play an increasingly active role in working with the countries of the region, from our allies to emerging powers like India, Indonesia, and China, to shape a peaceful, prosperous future for the billions who live in this increasingly central part of the world. This framework of security alliances, bilateral ties, and multilateral engagement provides the framework through which we are approaching the most urgent and dangerous challenge facing the region, the danger posed by North Korea's nuclear and missile programs, and the longer-term challenge of peaceful reintegration of the Korean Peninsula. So let me conclude by saying a few words about our approach to this challenge and where things stand in our effort to restart the six-party talks and move toward the goal shared by our four other partners in those talks, the verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. From the beginning of the Obama administration, we have made clear that the United States is prepared to engage diplomatically with North Korea and that we remain committed to the full implementation of all elements of the 2005 joint statement of the six-party talks. These include verifiable denuclearization, the establishment of a peace regime, normalization of relations, and economic and energy cooperation. As President Obama said in Seoul, and I quote, "Our message is clear. If North Korea is prepared to take concrete and irreversible steps to fulfill its obligation and eliminate its nuclear weapons program, the United States will support economic assistance and help promote its full integration into the community of nations. That opportunity and respect will not come with threats. North Korea must live up to its obligations." Those are the President's words. Pyongyang has expressed a desire to engage, but it has not yet shown that it will take the concrete steps necessary to live up to those obligations. Since agreeing to the 2005 joint statement, it has tested 2 nuclear devices, one in 2006 and one last May, modernized its ballistic missile arsenal, proliferated sensitive technologies and weapons, and engaged in provocative and destabilizing behavior. The international community, and particularly our partners in the six-party talks, have responded to these provocations firmly and clearly. Security Council Resolutions 1718 and 1874 are an important reflection of this determination, and we have taken together unprecedented steps to implement them. The new measures include a total ban on arms and related material exports from North Korea, and a major expansion of the ban on arms imports, strict financial restrictions, and enhanced provisions for inspection of suspected transfers of prescribed cargo. Last month, following close consultations between us and our allies and partners, Ambassador Stephen Bosworth, the U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Policy, led a delegation to Pyongyang. There, North Korean officials expressed a willingness in principle to resume six-party talks and reaffirmed their commitment to the September 2005 joint statement, including the goal of denuclearization. They did not reach agreement, however, on the specifics of when and how to proceed. Ambassador Bosworth made absolutely clear to the North Koreans that concrete actions through the six-party talks through verifiable denuclearization is the sole path to improved relations that North Korea claims to seek. We believe it's important that the six-party talks resume expeditiously and that North Korea begin to take those irreversible steps to eliminate its nuclear weapons program. In the meantime, neither the United States nor our allies will provide incentives or material benefits for North Korea simply to return to negotiations. The terms of the UN Security Council resolutions will continue to be enforced. And our determination to see that enforcement was made clear in the recent seizure of arms and related material from a North Korea chartered flight that was transiting Thailand. That incident clearly demonstrated the resolve of the international community in countering the proliferation of destabilizing technologies from North Korea. Meanwhile, we will continue to speak out clearly for the basic human freedoms and dignity to which all North Koreans are entitled. Secretary Clinton's designation of Bob King as a special envoy for human rights in North Korea and his recent travel to South Korea and Japan demonstrate the importance we attach to this issue. Secretary Clinton has described the approach that our administration is taking in close coordination with our six-party partners as one of strategic patience. That doesn't mean that we're not doing anything. On the contrary, we are working closely with our allies and partners in the region to offer North Korea a different future. Strategic patience means that North Korea must live up to its commitments and its international obligations. There is a clear path open through the six-party talks and denuclearization to achieve the security and international respect that North Korea says that it seeks. And once it returns to the six-party talks and begins to make progress on denuclearization, we will all be prepared to discuss, including where appropriate in bilateral talks, all the other elements of negotiation, including, with our South Korean partners, a permanent peace regime for the Korean Peninsula. But we will not defer the core nuclear issue. As Secretary Clinton has said, current sanctions will not be relaxed until Pyongyang takes verifiable, irreversible steps towards complete denuclearization. Its leaders should be under no illusion that the United States will ever have normal, sanctions-free relations with a nuclear-armed North Korea. It's also clear that our partners in the six-party talks share that view. The unity that we've seen in the past year with the unprecedented action by the UN Security Council and cooperative implementation of sanctions has been an important achievement, both for the future of this process and for future cooperation in Northeast Asia beyond this challenge. That's something I want to emphasize, that even as we work together on overcoming the very difficult challenge posed by North Korea, we can take advantage of our joint action to build a new capacity for cooperation and collective action in a part of a world that will become more and more important in the years to come. While our cooperation today is focused on denuclearization, we are also paving the way for cooperation on the broader challenges and opportunities of Northeast Asia and the entire Pacific region in the years and decades to come. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. The Secretary has agreed to take some questions. The floor is open, but please wait for the microphone and please state your name. Questions? Yes. Microphone, please.
I'm Jenny Bag with the USA Journal. Recently, North Korea demand a peace treaty with the United States before the six-party talks for them to give up to the nuclear weapons. What is the U.S. Position on that? And also, North Korea want, I'm sorry.
Okay. Let me try to answer the question. I don't want to try to characterize the North Koreans' position. I'll let them characterize their own position, but I will be happy to characterize ours, which is, as I said in my remarks, we believe that there's an appropriate time and place to discuss the issue of how we replace the armistice going forward. But the first step is to return to the six-party talks and to begin the process of denuclearization. Within that framework, we have a clear path forward to discuss the full range of issues, including the potential for a peace agreement. But as we do so, of course, we will do this in close consultation with our South Korean allies, who are indeed the principal parties in interest for any agreement of that sort. So there is a path forward. Certainly, we accept the fact that there is an appropriate time and place for those discussions to take place. But it should be very clear to the North Koreans that the way to get there, if that's their objective, is to return to the six-party talks and to begin the process of implementing their prior commitment under the 2005 joint statement.
Thank you. And also I have
excuse me, I'd like to take some other questions. Over there, yes.
Hi, Jim. Richard Scorza. What's your assessment of the Chinese interest in engaging in the human rights part of the portfolio that you described? And if you do assess it in a positive direction, how do you envision them taking some independent action along those lines?
I think the Chinese have made quite clear that they are concerned about stability in North Korea, and that instability in North Korea could affect their interests. So we've been trying to encourage them to see that the lack of human rights and the really appalling conditions in North Korea contribute to that instability, so that if China really is serious about wanting a stable peninsula and a diplomatic and political process to move forward, that it should use in its own way its influence to try to improve the situation of the people there, both economically and politically. I think it's hard to judge whether the Chinese are prepared to take on that role. Sometimes the Chinese do things without necessarily sharing their intentions with us. But we will continue to make clear to them that in their own interest, China ought to work with the North Koreans to create much better conditions of living for their people, and to recognize that the kind of human situation that prevails in North Korea is contrary to the interest of all of North Korea's neighbors.
Thank you. Yes, the gentleman on the right side.
Hey, good morning. I'm Foster Klug with the Associated Press. How does strategic patience take into the account the fact that North Korea continues to produce nuclear fuel while the U.S. and its partners are being patient?
I think what's clear as we took office was that a lot of water had passed under the bridge, and that North Korea had made some progress in developing its nuclear program. We need to make sure that as we deal with this, that we don't repeat what we saw in the past, which is rewards for actions which can be easily reversed. because interim measures that don't lead to a significant resolution of the overall crisis not only don't achieve our national objectives and the objectives of our parties, but actually are inducing a set of behaviors that are contrary to everyone's interest. And that while we remain concerned about North Korea's actions, we're working with China and others to make clear that there are costs for that. And so if North Korea continues to proceed in violation of Security Council resolutions, it will continue to suffer the consequences of strict implementation of 1874. So there's a cost to the North Koreans, and that's what I mean by the fact that strategic patience doesn't mean inaction. What it means is that we are prepared to enforce vigorously those sanctions until and unless North Korea takes meaningful steps to implement its obligations.
Thank you. Over there.
Bill Jones, EIR News. I'd like to ask a question about relations with South Korea. The South Korean have a very ambitious nuclear energy program, and they're considering the possibility of reprocessing nuclear fuels. And, of course, there's been restrictions on that, I think, dating back from 1976 legislation. And just over the last couple of days, Kurt Campbell has indicated that there would be a possibility of discussing this issue, so they'd be able to do that. I was wondering, what is the U.S. position on this particular issue? They've agreed to all the non-proliferation restrictions. They're cooperating in every way. Would it not be a possibility to allow them to do this reprocessing?
Well, as most of you know, the Korean Vice Foreign Minister was here just a few days ago, and I had an opportunity to have an extensive discussion with him and his colleagues on this issue. What we both agreed is that we have a very strong mutual interest in strengthening the global nonproliferation regime, and that there are deep concerns as more countries move to develop a civilian nuclear power about the risks of proliferation associated with the expansion of civilian nuclear power. So while we strongly support, and you heard the President very vigorously support the other night, our own interest in civilian nuclear power, we have to make sure that it's done in ways that don't foster dangerous proliferation behavior. And I think we're all very cognizant of a very real-term challenge, not only from North Korea, but also from Iran. And so as we move forward with civilian nuclear power, we have to be cognizant about the impact of activities involving the complete fuel cycle on the dangers of proliferation. And we've agreed to work together on the basic principle that however we strengthen our own national civilian nuclear power programs, we need to do it in a way that doesn't encourage dangerous proliferation-related behavior. We have an agreement with South Korea. We're having discussions about how modern technology can be applied under that agreement. But I think that core understanding, that shared understanding, what the Vice Foreign Minister very vigorously shared with me and my colleagues, was a clear determination that whatever we do to enhance civilian nuclear power, we must be cognizant of the proliferation consequences. And so our discussions will take place on that shared understanding, and we'll look forward to ways to see how we adapt it to those circumstances.
Thank you. Let me take a question from one of our participants in the overflow room. South Korean President Lee said he wanted to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-il this year. Do you have any comment on this, I guess, on North-South relations?
We strongly support President Lee and the very clear path that he's set forward about what is necessary to achieve peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. We have great confidence in our relationship and our close consultations. And I'm confident that whatever form of engagement the South Korean government chooses, we will do this in close cooperation, and that we will do it in the framework we've all agreed on, which is that if North Korea wants to make meaningful progress, it's going to need to return to the six-party talks. And this strong sense of shared approach is something that I think has characterized our relationships from the first days of our administration. And so we would be very supportive of the measures that President Lee takes, because we know that we're pursuing a shared goal.
Thank you. There was the gentleman all the way in the back.
Thanks. Sam Kim from Voice of America. I want to ask you about China's role in six-party talk. How satisfied are you on China's current effort to persuade North Korea and resume the six-party talk? Thank you.
From the outset of the administration, we've recognized that China is an important actor in the effort to achieve denuclearization of the peninsula. And we've had intensive discussions in a variety of fora, including here during the strategic and economic dialogues, and also during Secretary Clinton's visits to China, President Obama's visit to China, and my own trips there. And I'm quite convinced that the Chinese share our strong conviction that a nuclear North Korea would be an enormous danger to all and very destabilizing for the region. We continue to have a vigorous dialogue with China about how we think the measures that we've adopted under Resolution 1874 should be adopted. There are many positive steps that China has taken to implement those things, and there are issues that we continue to work out together as we try to resolve some of the ambiguities around particular transactions or activities. But I think we have seen a clear indication on China's behalf that it takes this seriously, that it understands the importance of sending an unambiguous signal to North Korea about the need for denuclearization, and we look forward to continued dialogue on these issues in the future.
The gentleman two rows down. Yep.
Thank you very much. Vladimir Karamurza with the RTVI television. What's the U.S. reaction to the small military incident between the North and South that took part, I think, on Tuesday? And a side question, you mentioned the reset button with Russia in your opening remarks. And many in Moscow have taken it that the so-called difficult issues of democracy and human rights will no longer be part of the U.S.-Russian agenda. Is that perception true or not? Thank you.
Let me go to the latter first. Clearly, we continue, because it's a universal preoccupation of the United States, to address those issues. Within the framework of this broader dialogue that we have established with Russia, that is one of the issues that we continue to discuss. We think it's quite important for Russia's own future that it continue to offer its own people the benefits of an open society with open media and freedom to discuss and debate. And so that will be an important part of our relationship. I think that the nature of the reset allows us to have these conversations without jeopardizing the overall relationship, because what we've recognized is that we will have areas of disagreement, as I said, and we're not using this to say that somehow we're going to paper over differences, but also to recognize that constructive partners can have differences, indeed vigorous differences on some issues, but still work together on common challenges, like North Korea, like Iran, and others. And so I think that's been one of the positive results of the way we've approached this, is we can have these differences where we have them, and yet still work together on common challenges. So I think that really sort of characterizes how we're going forward. On the recent activities near the northern limit line, we've been concerned about these, that we think they are provocative, and we've urged the North Koreans to exercise restraint. So far as we can tell, the military activity has not actually crossed the boundary there, but there are risks associated with this kind of behavior, and it's simply unnecessary. And so we would caution and urge the North Koreans to restrain and refrain from that.
Thank you, gentlemen. To the right here, yeah.
Herbert Levin. In the past, our Japanese friends have had various attitudes towards North Korea, from promising substantial reparations, which would be very big by their formula now, other times not wanting to engage with the North Koreans until they had returned people who they had kidnapped. Now they have a new administration, which is neuralgic for our friends in the Pentagon, who don't like democratic changes. My question, very simply, is where do you think the Japanese stand on the various positions towards North Korea at this point, or is it simply too early to tell how a very new Japanese administration will approach these things?
Well, it won't surprise you that I won't agree with your characterization of the Pentagon's views about our relationship with Japan. But we have had quite a good opportunity to discuss with the new government its approach to North Korea. And I think it's been quite reassuring how much in sync we are on this overall question. There's no question that the humanitarian dimension of the abducted Japanese citizens is a concern of the Japanese government, and why not? Why wouldn't it be? Any government would be concerned about that, just as we've been concerned about American citizens who are held in North Korea. So we don't see that at all as inconsistent. And indeed, as many of you know, during her visit to Tokyo, Secretary Clinton met with some of the families. So we share Japan's concern, and yet we are also on the same wavelength about the importance of moving forward on the six-party talks, of the central role of achieving denuclearization, and our common determination to take measures to strengthen our security alliance including concrete security measures, so long as North Korea continues in that direction. If it's going to continue to test ballistic missiles, if it's going to continue to test nuclear devices, we're going to continue to work with both South Korea and Japan to provide defenses and assured deterrence against the dangers that North Korea represents. And there's been no daylight, I think, between us and the new government in Tokyo about that issue.
Okay, I think we'll need to wrap it up shortly. We'll go to one final question here up front.
Okay, I'm from Beijing University. Thanks so much for your generosity to share the insights with us. My question just goes in two ways. One is, I'm very worried about the U.S.-China relations. There is a lot of speculations here, so our relations will be getting worse. So in your view, how bad or how our relations will be going? The second question related to our relation, coordinated approach to the Korean Peninsula. So in your view, the Peninsula relationship between Washington and Beijing will negatively affect our cooperation of the North Korea? Thanks.
Well, as I said, I actually look back on the past year as a very positive year in U.S.-China relations. We've had an opportunity from the very beginning, from really the first weeks of this administration, to signal the importance that we attach to U.S.-China relations, to our strong commitment to a constructive, cooperative relationship, and to build on the positive development that had taken place in previous years to broaden and strengthen the relationship. It's been manifest from the first weeks in President Obama's phone call to President Hu, to their meetings in London in April of last year, to President Obama's visit to Shanghai and Beijing last fall. We have differences with China on some issues, and China has differences with us on some issues. That's to be expected. And we don't believe that overnight, just as discussing in the case of our relationship with Russia, that these are going to go away. But I think what is critical is that we have a common commitment to manage those differences, to understand that the interests that we have in common are critical, and that neither of us are going to be able to achieve our fundamental objectives without the cooperation from each other. China has a profound interest in sustaining its own economic growth and providing opportunity to its people. That depends on a healthy global economic system, and it depends on cooperation between us and the other major economies of the world. China is concerned about proliferation, whether it's in North Korea or Iran. We have to work on those problems together. We have common interest in dealing with the problems of terrorism. We have common interest in dealing with global public health. And these are all issues, and climate change. These are all issues that we provide a strong basis for the relationship. Again, we have some differences, and we'll hear more about those differences in coming days. But I think it's in the nature that we can speak clearly and candidly about what our positions are, and yet understand that our long-term interests will be vastly improved on both sides if we can work through these differences and try to find a common way forward. So I'm not pessimistic. I don't dispute that we'll have some bumps. But that's the nature of an evolving relationship in these circumstances. And we're very committed to work through them. I believe the leadership in Beijing is too. And we look forward to finding ways to build on the relationship. As I say, with the upcoming second round of the strategic and economic dialogue will be a good opportunity for us to view the relationship in toto, which I think is a very important perspective to keep in mind as we handle with individual issues going forward. Thank you very much for your time and attention. It's been a great pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much. We have a 15 minutes break.